Hey everyone, we're back to work on the second part of our randomly generated campaign. If you don't know what's going on because you didn't watch the last one, strongly suggest you do that. So last time we decided that through all of this, I'm going to put a bit of work into it between recordings to get a better idea for the storyline. So we came up with, we have a, right here on this guy, weapon's more of an ally than a tool. Decided that the adventurers live in a little village in the mountains. Their village was given a ceremonial hammer by some dwarves that live nearby. Turns out the ceremonial hammer they got is actually a key that opens dwarven doors. All of them. So what I figured was, at some point in the past, you had a dwarven king who decided, you know what, I'm going to rule everybody. And everyone else said, you and what army? So he made a tool that opened every door so his army could not be denied. And then through the magic of backstory, which we're not going to worry about, obviously he didn't succeed. The dwarves that lived here gave it to the village the party starts in. So here's a gesture of our friendship. Here's this beautifully crafted thing. We'd like you to keep it. Turns out someone here figured out what it does. And they're like, well, we don't want this thing. This is a big responsibility. We're going to give it back to the dwarves. Maybe they can find a way to destroy it. Along the way, someone else decides they want it too. The party is pursued through a bunch of tunnels. They figure out what the hammer does. They kind of figure out who's behind it. And in the process of trying to escape, they wind up on the seashore. A bunch of big waves come up, wash away whatever flunkies the big bad had chasing them. And a bunch of merfolk decide that, we'd like that hammer, because we're not really big friends with the dwarves either. At which point the party goes to the dwarves and says, well, we tried to bring it back, we don't have it, now what? The dwarves go, well, we'd like to have this thing, so they don't have it. You have to go to them and find out what they want. So, here in episode 2, we're going to figure out what the people who live under the waves want done in order for the party to reclaim the hammer and give it back to who it belongs to. So just like last time, shuffle up this pack of very dog-eared Ultra Pro sleeves. I could put them in better ones, but the amount of shuffling these things get, the Ultra Pros may be 10 years old, but they hold up rather well. 2 off the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll just read these all off when I get them all. So what we come up with, using each one of these in turn, the stars are wrong. We're going underwater and we've already got a Cthulhu mention. A raging storm moves across town. Someone seems to intentionally fail. And you remember the lingo. It's hard to use astronomy with underwater creatures because they don't see the skies. But I guess if you lived on the bottom of the ocean, the skies would be a mystery to you. And perhaps only your cleric class actually goes to the surface to see what's going on. So someone up there went up, noticed something was off. And if we're going by the Cthulhu reference, this has to do with the timing of certain things. A raging storm moves across town. We're underwater. Maybe we're not that far underwater. Maybe we're only a little ways off the coast. Someone seems to intentionally fail. Alright. You've gone to talk to the merfolk, but this happens first. This is the thing that you're going to use to get, the party's going to use to gain their trust. Someone has noticed that some astrological sign is off. A star has shifted in the sky or something. And that's a portent of disaster. A little ways off, further into the distance. Let's just go with a tsunami. They try to get ready to prepare for it. Someone has sabotaged whatever efforts they're going to use to fix it. They've sabotaged it to hobble the merfolk and city, or whatever it is underground. With the plan being that the ensuing chaos, they're going to grab the hammer. And because we're dealing with, we already went with drow with the bad guys, will give the character a certain flair for the dramatic, scrawl something on the walls that you would need a certain language skill to decipher. One of the party members has it, which means at some point the DM has checked out what everyone has for skills and languages. Someone knows how to read whatever this is. And it gives them an idea of who's behind it and how to fix it. So it's going to be some bit of minutia that the merfolk don't know because it's outside of their culture. It'll be written in some form of Old Dwarvish. Someone figures this out. Something along the lines of, by this way, I destroy my enemies or something. And that's the clue they need to fix whatever it is to save the merfolk settlement. And they're like, well, okay, you saved us. You got our trust, but we can't give you this thing unless you really, really prove it to us that you're not going to stab us in the back. Given the bit of combat and problem solving the party figured out in the first adventure, whatever this does should get them to about level 4. So you got a level here worth of fighting you did in tunnels, some problem solving. Level 3 or 4, somewhere in there. So our party has... Well, let's go level 4, so at least the wizards and clerics have second level spells. Set those aside. So what the merfolk actually want us to do, maybe this time. So we have a witness offers to confess, others follow your advice, an opponent appears to avenge your foe, and you lose your train of thought. The party's actions here win the settlement's trust. A witness offers to confess. Someone says, someone who worked within the community with the bad guy, with the sabotage, says, I'm sorry for what I did. I thought the bad guy had the good idea. You guys have the good idea. I'm going to tell you where he went. Others follow your advice. The party realizes this is a bit more than they've bitten off a bit more than they can chew. They're going to have to convince a few of the merfolk civilians to give them a hand with this. And the more they can convince, the easier it's going to be. So this will be a series of diplomatic bluff. I don't want to use intimidation because we're the good guys here. A series of social encounters to build up aid. We have an opponent appears to avenge your foe. So our options are either opponent shows up to avenge our foe or opponent seems to avenge our foe. We've already gone through a bunch of social encounters here. I'd like to keep that going. So someone back here that's still not very convinced tries to undermine the party's efforts, which is again more social interactions. They'll have to compete against either the enemy's diplomacy or bluff on whether or not we're going to go with a statesman or a charlatan. I think we're going to go with diplomacy. We'll have to convince everyone again. But at this point, they'll have a bunch of evidence, they'll have a bunch of stuff. This would have been going around individual groups. This will be a more public kind of thing. Not a trial, but this one here, you lose your train of thought. I don't like this one. I'm going to call in a cheat. A folk tale reveals its wisdom. Alright. A bad guy flunky shows up and says, I'm sorry for what I've done. I'm going to tell you what you need to do to stop him. We have to collect allies because we can't do this on our own. We'll go with someone rich and powerful. Someone with, not so much with a lot to lose, but with stature to lose. Because maybe everyone doesn't want to listen to him anymore. A public trial to retain allies. and then a folktale reveals its wisdom. One of the party members remembers some kind of story that wins the day. Leave that up to you to figure out. Oh, because now we need something that's not social interaction. We need to actually get on the road. We spent most of the campaign, most of this bit, talking away in a village. We haven't done any combat yet, and our combat characters are going to be rather irritated that they haven't had a chance to kill anything yet. These are players, after all. The whole point behind building stuff is to kill things. You prove your trustworthiness. Yes, we've done that. Thank you. Hardship changes opinions. You insist on doing a job right. A failure reveals itself as a success. Now, because this is combat, you have to go and do something. Go get something from somewhere. The snitch has told us where we can find, not the big bad, that's a last act kind of thing, but tells us where a second in command is who can probably get us to the big bad. So again, I've got a bunch more magic cards. These are all non-basic lands I'm using for random settings. We're going to have to go to a government building in town. Some of the Ravnica ones. So a government building in town where we'll have to... A building in town owned by this guy back here has all the flunkies who were supposed to go and get the hammer during the disaster. More Pathfinder product here because at one point I made far, far too much money for my own good. So the person we're going to look for obviously has something wrong with them. I'm going to guess that's some kind of, it's over here, that's some kind of wizard type character, backed up by a cleric and some kind of performer who blended into the rest of the town. Put these away. These guys would come in. Let's get this back on the screen here. We're going to go with a cult. A merfolk cult. Try to figure that one out. The dungeon will have... It's the basement of a big important building. Hidden somewhere inside it will be whatever tunnels and rooms you have to go through. Your fights should involve one second level cleric, a second level rogue, 2 fighters, and then depending on the rest of the party makeup, throw in a sorcerer if there are more than 3 magic using characters, and an additional first level fighter for every full 5 members of the party. So if you have a wizard, a cleric, a rogue, a couple of fighters you should be facing, and you're all like level 3 or 4 at this point, so most of the bad guys here aren't going to be too difficult. The point should be a challenge, not a raffle stomp. You're going to throw in a few more aquatic monsters, not a whole lot of people from the town. There'll be a handful of people from the town. At which point, at the end of this, the party's going to explain why they killed a bunch of them. And then a few other things like maybe scum, a troglodyte with a class level. I think they're a 2-hit die monster. Your choice for everyone to use. I'm just trying to figure out roughly what you would expect to see, right? You're not going to see your typical standard topside fare. No orcs, no goblins, no ogres, no undead. You'll have to be a little inventive with what's going to happen down here, who they're going to encounter. During the fight for this cult, hardship changes opinions. Some of your allies are going to wonder why they're beating up on people who they thought were their friends. So whoever's got all the ranks in diplomacy is going to be really important in keeping the whole group together. Most of the guys you've got, the people you've accumulated, they're going to be level 1 fighters, maybe a cleric. No one really all that tough. Like the idea being that worst case scenario, you lose all of them, you still defeat the bad guy. You're going to look awful in the eyes of the people down here that you got all the people killed. But you'll have to use your wits to keep the group together. You insist on doing a job right. The party will be given the option of chasing the group away or letting them flee. They say, we'll come back, we'll never bother you again. Or dealing with them outright. And even then, if you kill them all, you don't learn anything. If you can capture them, you'll gain a lot more information. So doing the job right is going to involve making sure you capture this guy and at least one of these two. And they'll give you the information to go and find the big bad. These two will be helpful, but without him, it's going to be a bit more difficult. There'll be a few more things in the way. A failure reveals itself as success. Here's a big twist. Their inability to stop the party was something the big bad planned all along. The party won't know this, but these guys will feed them intentionally false information. Which is a real backstab. Yeah, I know. As long as they catch him, they'll gain a bunch of stuff, a bunch of knowledge they need to figure out what's going to happen in the next area, but that's a decoy. Like, yeah, they might be able to breeze through the next chapter, but in the end, it's all going to turn out to be a feint. The real big bad has gone somewhere else. He's doing something. This was to keep the party occupied. But the players won't find that out until somewhere deep in the next one, where they'll have, provided I remember this, they'll have the option to either bail and go do the real thing, or fight their way through the feint and create some kind of better good in the process. Like, they're still going to fix things. There's still, a good thing will still come from having defeated the feint, but it will cost them a bunch of time. So our third act is going to be the players falling into the trap. The better they do in dealing with the trap, as the DM, you'll have to write down what they picked up. Did they get this? Did they get that? Did that? And a lot of these things will help out in part 4, which is a little ways away, but hopefully we'll get as good material out of part 4 as we got out of this one. I'm hoping it doesn't take me as long to record the next one as it did this one. Yeah, hoping. See you guys later.